Welcome back to this Indianomics two-part special on center-state finances. In the first of the series, I'm speaking with the IT Minister of the state of Tamil Nadu, Mr. Palanivel Thiaga Rajan. We were just speaking to him about the tricky issue of cesses, which has decreased the shareable resources, the shareable taxes, which include, of course, income tax, customs and excise. Mr. PTR, I take your point that cesses have overwhelmed and reduced the amount of shareable resources. But a large part of this increase in cess, or at least a substantial part of the increase in cess, is also because of the compensation cess. If you take that out, perhaps, and the compensation cess was for GST, then perhaps the sin looks a little less.
Absolutely not, for two reasons. One, the compensation cess is over, it's dead, according to the union government. It died last June. So it's 0% now of the cesses are going through GST. Even when it was less than 2 or 3% of all cesses collected, meaning if total cesses were 22, 23%, the GST compensation cess was 2 or 3%. So let's not find like back doors to explain this away. Okay. The reality is that this is kind of systematic political allocation of resources to those states where the government in Delhi thinks it has the right vote share, and taking it away in every way possible from those states where it thinks that it does not got a right vote share. This is as political a financial decision as any you can ever see.
Oh, Mr. Thiaga Rajan, that would be going a stretch too far. Haryana and Punjab have also been receiving much less of taxes, much less of revenues from the central government compared to their taxes. Of course, all the 5 southern states are there, but also in that list is Haryana. And likewise, the states which receive more than they give also includes Rajasthan, which until recently was not a BJP state, and which was getting the benefit. For that matter, even West Bengal, traditionally a non-BJP or a non-central government state, always.
I won't concede your argument. I'll go another way. I would say it turns out that those states that have high education, high growth, high development, and low population growth rates tend to not vote for the BJP. And those states where that is the opposite, at least in the union elections, in the MP elections, tend to seem to vote for the BJP. That's the only point I make.
Would your advice therefore be that there should be a cap on the cess amount, because the cess will always be needed? Like in 1971, we needed a war veteran cess after the 71 war. So you don't conceptually go against the cess, but you want to put a limit on the amount that can be set aside as cess. Would that be your ask of the Finance Commission?
I have 2 very specific asks. One, cesses should only be temporary in nature for specific needs at specific times, like a war, like a pandemic. There should be no permanent cesses, number one. And I'm not the only one. Many, many people have made that point. Number 2, the notion of centrally sponsored schemes itself is antithetical to the original constitutional design, because a lot of the subjects on which there are centrally sponsored schemes are actually state subjects. So to me, if you want the purity of the Constitution of 1951, what you want is to have no cesses except in special circumstances for limited periods, and get out of the centrally sponsored schemes business, because you can't fund them through cesses. Put the money into the ratio according to the Finance Commission. It may have many inefficiencies. I think can do a better job, but that's a different day, different debate. And then at least you'll have some reasonable predictability and remove the politics from these kinds of decisions.
Okay, so may I say that your main point is let there be tax devolution only, that grants and central schemes be reduced to the absolute minimum, or should they be done away with altogether? What would your ask be?
That's my point. My point is that N.K. Singh, as I said, the Finance Commission chairman of the 15th Finance Commission and a very respected member of the elite in this realm, he himself raised the question that it's a legitimate question to ask, why should there be centrally sponsored schemes? Right? It's like you trying to insert yourself into state subjects using some central design. Is that really in keeping with the spirit of the Constitution? And I say this apart from parties, right? UPA governments did it, NDA governments do it. I still say, you see, the clarity of a guy like me, I talk about values, I talk about the constitution, I talk about economic policy. It doesn't matter if it's done by party A or party B, my party or the opposition party, right is still right and wrong is still wrong.
Yes.
So I'm saying it was wrong then and it's wrong now.
Okay. All right. Well, just a final point. Would you therefore also want something like a fiscal council, which the 14th Finance Commission had recommended, which is, a constitutional body outside the realm of the state and the central governments, something like the Finance Commission, which is a sitting council that looks into the injustices on an ongoing basis and does the calculations, more ethically. Would that be an ask?
Were such a council to be structured in a way that it functioned truly independent of the government of India and the party in power, I would be all for it. But my experience on the GST Council, though it is supposed to be the epitome of federalism right now, I make this point that the meetings themselves are very, full of decorum. The Union Finance Minister is always unfailingly courteous, gives everybody time to speak and all that. But the design, from how the agenda gets set to who gets to frame the GOM, who gets to set their mandate, their chairman, who gets to decide what topics go to Fitment Committee, who gets to decide what topics go to Law Committee, who gets to decide, which is voted on what day. All of this is 100% in the control of the Union Finance Ministry, who also have a 30% vote in a quorum that requires 75% to pass any resolution. That means they can do anything. So I'm saying, if that itself is designed that way, and that is supposed to be the height of federalism, I'm not hopeful that we'll design some other body that will be truly open to a neutral
Fair enough.
discussion.
Okay, well, then a no for the Fiscal Council, but the main ask of the IT Minister of Tamil Nadu, speaking, I think, for many of the richer states, the more developed states, is that the amount of grants and centrally sponsored schemes be reduced, let there be more of tax devolution, and let there not be a reduction in the divisible pool by taking out some in terms of cesses. That's the main ask from the IT Minister. Mr. Palanivel Thiaga Rajan, thank you very much for joining us in this first edition of our Central State devolution discussion.
For having me.
With that, we wrap up on this edition of Indianomics. Thank you very much for watching.